You're not family. That's the humiliation I swallowed. They kicked me out of my own son's wedding, but she didn't know I was paying for their luxury, their car, even their rent. A week later, she called, begging for cash, almost crying, and I just answered with a smile. Oh, really? What I told her next, that shut her up for good. Before we continue, hit like and subscribe, and tell me in the comments what city or state you're watching from. I need you to understand something right from the start. I wasn't just a mom. I was the mom. The kind who sacrificed, who saved, who finally found her footing in life just as her son Liam was finding his. I had a decent career, a comfortable income, and I saw my hard-won stability not as a reward for myself, but as the foundation for his future. Liam, my only son, marrying Tiffany, it was supposed to be the moment I watched my little bird finally soar. It was supposed to be my victory lap for a lifetime of dedication. But Tiffany, bless her conniving heart, had a different plan. It happened over an incredibly awkward dinner at their apartment. The one I helped pay for, naturally. Tiffany, 26 years old and looking every bit the polished, entitled princess she thought she was going over the final guest list with Liam. I was there because, well, who organizes a wedding without the mother of the groom, especially when the mother of the groom is quietly footing most of the bills? We were talking flowers, specifically the ridiculously expensive orchids that were apparently essential, when Tiffany cleared her throat, all sugary, sweet, and brittle. Chris, she started, not meeting my eyes, instead inspecting a smudge on her wine glass. We need to talk about the list. We've had to make some seriously tough cuts, darling. The venue is just too tight. I frowned. Cuts? But we're over budget on the flowers and the open bar. No, darling, she interrupted, her voice gaining a sharp, condescending edge. She finally looked up, her blue eyes colder than an Arctic storm. I mean your list. Specifically you. I actually laughed. I thought it was a joke, a terrible, tasteless joke. Me? You mean the guest list I submitted? My cousins? No, Chris. You. We've made the decision that the ceremony and the small reception afterward are going to be strictly family. Immediate family only. She paused, letting the silence hang, then delivered the blow that cracked my heart in half. You're not family, Chris? The air left my lungs in a painful rush. The room didn't just feel cold. It felt like a vacuum. I looked at Liam, my son, my boy, who was now staring intently at his plate, tracing the rim with his finger, silent. He didn't defend me. He didn't argue. He just sat there, letting his new fiancée, this cold, calculating woman, deliver the ultimate act of public, personal humiliation. We decided, Tiffany continued, her voice now flat and managerial, that since your relationship with your ex-husband isn't cohesive and honestly, the dynamic is complicated, it's just easier if you don't attend the ceremony. We'll send you photos, of course. Maybe you can meet us for a quick drink at the bar later. A quick drink. That's what I was worth. I was a contamination to her perfect day. Kicked out. Expelled from my own son's wedding. I stumbled through some mumbled excuse, gathered my purse, and left the apartment that still, technically, had my name on the mortgage title. I drove home through the blinding city lights, the shame burning hotter than any fever. The betrayal, the deep, guttural understanding that Liam had allowed this, was the worst part. I got home, the house quiet and vast. I didn't cry. The tears wouldn't come. Instead, a cold, hard knot formed in my stomach. The knot of a woman who had been humiliated one time too many. I walked straight to my desk, picked up my wallet, and my fingers slid across the smooth, matte black surface of the premium credit card. She said I wasn't family. I whispered to the empty room, a cruel little smile touching the corner of my lips. She doesn't have the faintest idea of what I really am. That night, I was no longer just Chris the mother. I was Chris, the woman who had a plan for silent, surgical retribution. I sat at my kitchen table, surrounded by old bank statements and legal documents. This chapter of the story, the one where I became a monster, started with me taking an inventory of my love, a love I had foolishly monetized. I needed to see the numbers, the cold, hard proof of their dependency, to keep the humiliation from turning into paralyzing grief. Because that's what their exclusion was, a declaration that my financial contributions were welcome, but my presence was not. I was the silent, inexhaustible ATM, and Tiffany, and by extension Liam, had decided the bank was closed for withdrawals but open for deposits. Let's start with the apartment. 2 years ago, they wanted to start fresh. I happily signed the check for the hefty down payment. I didn't co-sign the main mortgage, but I insisted on being listed as a partial title holder, a backup, just in case Liam ever ran into trouble. It gave me legal standing, a safety net. Tiffany hated that small detail, but she needed the money too much to argue. That down payment represented 10 years of careful savings. They treated the place like it was a gift, a permanent home funded purely by magic. They never made a major payment toward the principal. Then there was the car. Liam had landed a dream job that required a better vehicle. So I bought the sedan, paid off most of it, and kept the remaining small mortgage in my name. A mortgage, mind you, that I had been paying the installments on, even though Liam was supposed to be covering the maintenance. I controlled the title. It was worth a solid $40,000, which felt like an invisible chain around my neck and a fancy status symbol around theirs. But the real insult, the one that stung the most, was the credit card. It was a secondary card tied to my premium account, a card I opened for actual emergencies. Liam knew the rules. Only for something dire like a sudden hospital bill or a car breakdown. Tiffany, however, had treated it as her personal extension of my endless generosity. Looking at the detailed statements now, I pulled up 3 months' worth. It was a kaleidoscope of pure, unnecessary luxury. Designer shoes, spa weekends, expensive dinners. That card, which I had just received the latest bill for, was carrying nearly $5,000 in what she considered her emergencies. I realized then that the exclusion wasn't personal. It was transactional. They saw me as the means, not the end. The hurt solidified into a cold, diamond-hard resolve. This wasn't about revenge. It was about establishing the true value of my position. Tiffany believed she could simply discard the non-family when she was done with the financial dependency. She was profoundly mistaken. My hands, which had trembled slightly in the car, were now steady as I organized the documents. The car title, the deed to the apartment, detailing my part ownership, the login credentials for my banking and investment accounts. The wedding was in 1 week. I didn't have time for tears or self-pity. I walked over to my heavy oak dresser, the one my grandmother gave me, and pulled out the small, fireproof safe. The documents went in. I closed the door, the metallic click sounding like the final lock on my decision. The wedding would be in a week, I muttered, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. I didn't have time for tears. I had a plan. A very legal, very binding plan. This was the chapter of the quiet execution. While Tiffany and Liam were running around, finalizing seating charts and bickering over the shade of the tablecloths, I was orchestrating a financial earthquake beneath their feet. They were oblivious, wrapped up in the bubble of their upcoming perfect day. I was focused, meticulous, and absolutely ruthless. I started early the next morning. My first call was to my bank manager, an old acquaintance named Robert who understood discretion. I didn't mince words. Robert, I need you to cancel the secondary card attached to my platinum account, effective immediately. And make sure the reason is listed as fraudulent activity or security breach, something that flags it immediately. I don't want Tiffany getting a warning text. I want it to simply fail. Robert, hearing the controlled fury in my voice, only asked one question. Done, Chris? Anything else? Yes, I replied, my voice steady. The mortgage on the sedan registered to Liam. I want to pay off the remaining balance and sell the title to a holding company, the one we discussed. I want it handled cleanly, so the new lien holder can send the notification of the change of ownership. This would legally transfer the burden of the car, forcing them to deal with a new, less forgiving entity. The second call was to my lawyer, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Elaine. This was the big one, the apartment. Elaine, I need you to execute the transfer documents immediately. Use my co-ownership status to move my controlling share of the apartment title into the family trust fund we established last year. I need a registered notification sent to Liam and Tiffany's address, informing them that the terms of the mortgage have been violated due to the change in title holding, and they have 7 days to refinance the full amount or the property will enter foreclosure proceedings with the new entity. Elaine was the only person who dared to ask for the full story. I gave her the bare minimum. I was uninvited to my son's wedding by his fiancée. I will not fund their lifestyle while being discarded. Elaine, perhaps sensing the depth of the betrayal, simply replied, "Understood, Chris. I'll have the confirmation emails ready by the end of the day." That day was a blur of clicking pens and signed documents. It wasn't about rage. It was about cold, calculated pragmatism. Every signature was an act of personal preservation, a reclamation of my own worth. I didn't feel joy or relief. I felt the dull, necessary ache of extracting a parasite. I was withdrawing the roots of my financial devotion from their very foundation. They had built their entire life, their illusion of success, on my silent sacrifice. Now, I was pulling the rug out. As the day ended, I sat back in my desk chair, sipping a glass of water, the silence of the office broken only by the chime of an incoming email. It was Elaine. The subject line read, "Confirmation. All assets secured in your favor." I smiled into the darkness of the evening. A true smile this time. A smile of power regained. They were getting married tomorrow, I mused. And I had a gut feeling that their honeymoon, the one they were so proud of, would be unforgettable for the wrong reasons. The day of the wedding arrived, bright and offensively cheerful. My social media was a toxic wasteland of distant relatives and mutual acquaintances posting heavily filtered photos of Tiffany's perfect, orchid-heavy, absurdly expensive venue. I avoided it all like the plague. I had planned my own day with a military-like precision that was the antithesis of the chaos they were currently enjoying. My first stop was the spa. I indulged in a deep tissue massage that kneaded away the tension built up over the last week of plotting. With every knot she loosened in my back, I imagined a financial knot tightening around Liam and Tiffany. During the massage, I allowed myself a brief moment of reflection. The absence of the wedding invitation, the source of such initial anguish, now felt like a profound liberation. For years, I had poured my energy, my love, and my resources into Liam. I had been the martyr mother, silently supporting his choices, even the disastrous ones. By excluding me, Tiffany had not just hurt me, she had freed me. She had severed the invisible leash of obligation that had bound me to their unappreciated lives. That evening, as they were exchanging vows and pretending to be financially independent adults, I was having dinner at my favorite upscale restaurant. A perfectly grilled steak, a glass of magnificent Cabernet, and the best table in the house. I toasted myself silently, not to revenge, but to self-worth. My strategy for the immediate aftermath was simple: strategic silence. I would not respond to any attempts at contact, which I knew would eventually come. I knew the moment they hit the honeymoon suite in whatever exotic locale Tiffany had chosen, one of two things would happen. Tiffany would try to pay for something luxurious with the canceled credit card, leading to immediate public embarrassment. Liam would discover the legal notifications regarding the apartment and the car waiting in their mailbox. The thought of Tiffany's face when the card was declined, the embarrassment, the sudden, panicked realization, gave me a quiet satisfaction that steak couldn't match. They had built their facade on my money, and now the foundation was crumbling, brick by silent, legal brick. The days that followed the wedding were quiet. Blissfully, utterly quiet. I threw myself into my new hobby, gardening, ironically, the ultimate act of growth and patient care. I waited for the volcano to erupt, knowing I had planted the seeds of the coming storm. On the fifth day, I logged into my banking app. I checked my investment account. A significant transfer had entered, the result of the mortgage sale I had executed. The number was reassuringly large, proof that my actions, though painful, were financially sound. I had recovered a substantial portion of the money they had been consuming. I put my phone on silent. I watched the sunset. Felt like a lifetime, I thought, but it was only a week. They were due back tomorrow. My phone was probably buzzing off the hook with missed notifications and frantic texts, but none of them were from Tiffany. Yet, the volcano finally erupted on the 7th day after the wedding. I was in my garden, pruning a particularly stubborn rose bush, a metaphor, perhaps, for cutting away the dead weight in my life, when my cell phone rang. I let it ring once, twice, enjoying the unfamiliar tune that Tiffany had assigned to my contact, a sickly sweet jingle that now sounded deeply irritating. I wiped the dirt from my hands and answered on the third ring, my voice pitched perfectly at calm, concerned, and slightly surprised. Hello? Oh, Tiffany. What a nice surprise, dear. How was the honeymoon? Her voice initially was a forced melody of warmth. Oh, Chris, it was fabulous. Just heaven. We just got back last night. We're still adjusting to the time change. You know how it is. She prattled on, trying to sound casual, but the underlying tension was palpable, like a tightly pulled wire. She wasn't calling to share vacation photos. So she finally segued too smoothly. The reason I called is we ran into a bit of a snag. A tiny little hiccup. We're just waiting for the final funds transfer from Liam's new investment portfolio to clear, and it's taking forever. I feigned perfect ignorance. Oh, transfers can be a pain. What's the issue? Well, we have a few unexpected expenses, life things, and we just need a quick little loan to tide us over. Just until the big transfer clears. Like a quick advance? 10,000 would totally cover it. She didn't even pretend it was an emergency anymore. It was just a demand. I allowed myself a moment of theatrical sympathy. Oh, sweetie, $10,000? That's quite a lot for a hiccup. Did you check the credit card I gave Liam for emergencies? It has a large limit. You should be fine using that. There was a pregnant pause on the line. Oh, that one, Tiffany hissed, the sugary facade cracking. That one has been problematic. It was declined at the resort. We think there's a technical issue with the chip or something. I chuckled internally. Technical issue. That was my favorite kind of technical issue. I pressed gently. So you're saying you need me to bail you out of a $10,000 problem while you wait for Liam's big transfer? Tiffany's voice elevated, now tight with impatience and frustration at my lack of immediate compliance. She dropped the facade entirely. Mother Chris, we need the money now. Look, the reality is the fat invoice for the main card, the one we use for the apartment payments and everything, is totally overdue. We were trying to pay it off with your emergency card before the transfer went through, but it didn't work. The bank manager just said we need to transfer $10,000 immediately, or he's initiating some awful, horrible process, the one where he… click. I had casually leaned my elbow on the desk, accidentally hitting the end call button. I looked at the phone, my heart racing not with fear, but with the exhilarating rush of control. I knew what she was about to say. I knew what legal notification was already sitting in their mailbox. I didn't need to hear her finish the threat. She would call back. She absolutely would. And the next time the act would be over. My phone screamed less than 10 seconds later. I let it ring twice before picking up, maintaining the same measured, calm breath I had practiced during my meditation session earlier that week. Tiffany, darling. Did we get cut off? What were you saying about the bank manager's awful, horrible process? There was no politeness left. Tiffany's voice was a ragged mix of panic and fury. The cool, controlled Nora had vanished, replaced by a desperate, screeching young woman. Don't play dumb, Chris. You know exactly what I was talking about. That card, your platinum card, it's been locked. And because it's linked to the automatic payment for the main mortgage account, the payment bounced. It's your fault. You did this. She was spiraling, revealing the full extent of her dependency and her utter lack of personal responsibility. She assumed I was stupid, that I wouldn't understand the complex web of interconnected financial ruin she was creating. My fault. I asked, my tone still mild, almost pitying. I'm sorry, Tiffany, I only provided that card for emergencies, like a medical crisis. Was a new pair of Manolo Blahniks a medical crisis on your honeymoon? Stop it. This isn't about shoes, she shrieked, and now I could hear the wet, ragged sound of genuine crying. We need the 10,000 now. Everything is freezing up. Liam tried to transfer funds from his saving account, and they put a hold on it because of the bounced payment. She was confirming everything I needed to know. They had zero liquidity, relying entirely on my credit facilities and the illusion of ownership I provided. You have to help us. It's your duty, Chris. You're his mother. You're supposed to be family. That word. Family. It was the final, pathetic plea of a drowning person. A word she had weaponized against me, and was now trying to use as a shield. I let her beg, letting the toxic mix of entitlement and terror wash over me. It was the climax of the emotional power play, and the moment I finally reclaimed my soul. I am his mother, yes, I agreed softly. But you defined my role, Tiffany. You defined who was family and who was not. I took a deliberate, deep breath, relishing the silence that followed. You told me very clearly that I was not family. You told me I was not welcome at the wedding. You kicked me out of my own son's life. Tiffany stopped crying and started shouting again. Pure hysteria now. That was just about the guest list for the seating chart. We didn't mean it. We need the money, Chris. We need the apartment. I leaned closer to the phone, my voice dropping back to that calm, unsettling level. You need the apartment? Oh dear. You seem to be missing a very crucial piece of information, Tiffany. The line crackled with her rising desperation. I can't lose my apartment. Where are we going to live, Chris? I smiled, a real smile this time, full of cold satisfaction. I had my answer ready. Where you will live. That is an interesting question, Tiffany. Truly interesting. I didn't let Tiffany stay in suspense for long. I knew she was hanging on my next words, her mind racing through every possible scenario. She probably expected me to launch into a moral lecture. But I gave her nothing but cold, hard facts layered with an irony so sharp it could cut glass. Let's go back to your definition of family and duty, Tiffany. I began, my tone measured, almost academic. You decided I wasn't worthy of a seat at the table. Fine. I accepted your terms. My duty ended the moment you expelled me. I went in for the first, relatively minor punch. You mentioned the emergency credit card. The one that was declined at your fancy resort. I canceled that card the day before your wedding. Not because of a technical issue, but because I initiated a fraud report. That card, by the way, is the one you used to buy that stunning ivory wedding dress. The irony isn't lost on me that you financed the symbol of your new family with the money of the woman you exiled. Tiffany gasped, a small, pathetic sound of realization. You ruined the honeymoon. No, darling, I corrected gently. You ruined the relationship. I simply adjusted my financial exposure. But that's the small problem. You mentioned the main card, the one you depended on to pay the apartment mortgage and all your other, frankly excessive lifestyle payments. I delivered the second blow. The reason that main payment bounced isn't just because the secondary card was declined. The reason that main payment bounced, the reason the bank manager is threatening awful, horrible processes, is because the principal source of wealth you were counting on to bail you out no longer exists. She tried to interrupt, sputtering something about Liam's inheritance, but I cut her off firmly, my voice rising just enough to establish complete authority. Stop. I listened to you beg and lie for 2 days. Now you listen to me. I've taken care of the small debts. I sold the mortgage on the luxury car I bought for Liam to a private lender. I did this 3 days before your wedding. That new lender has already initiated repossession proceedings. That car you're driving? It will be taken. Consider that my wedding gift to you both. The silence was heavier this time, burdened by the weight of reality. She had been stripped of her mobility and status symbol. But wait, she stammered, clinging to the one thing she thought was safe. The apartment. The deed is in Liam's name. You can't touch that. You can't leave us homeless. I almost laughed. I loved the way she always tried to use Liam's name as her final fortress. But the fortress was made of sand. You keep thinking the game is simple, don't you, Tiffany? You keep believing you know the rules. I let the smile reach my voice. You have one detail wrong, my dear. Are you absolutely certain the apartment is still entirely in Liam's name? This was the chapter where the truth, cold and unadorned, was laid bare. I decided to give her the full, devastating legal analysis. No more games. No more soft tone. Just facts. Let me educate you, Tiffany, I stated, leaning back, picturing her frantic, tear-streaked face. When I handed over the down payment for that apartment, I insisted on a crucial clause, co-ownership. Liam's name was primary, yes, but my name was on the deed as a major contributor and co-owner. That meant 2 things. First, I protected my investment. Second, and more importantly, it gave me the legal right to execute a maneuver you never considered. I paused for dramatic effect, allowing the realization to slowly dawn on her. 2 days after you told me I wasn't family, I executed a deed transfer. I moved my controlling share of the apartment title, the financial bulk of the ownership, into a private, irrevocable trust fund managed by my lawyer. Legally, the majority owner of the property is now that trust. This action, my dear, constitutes a major violation of the original mortgage agreement. Tiffany let out a choked sound, a mix of realization and sheer terror. No, you didn't. That's illegal. It's perfectly legal, I corrected calmly. In fact, the notice regarding the required immediate refinancing or the initiation of foreclosure proceedings by the trust should have arrived at your apartment a few days ago. Remember how you were worried about the bank manager's awful, horrible processes? That's it. The car is gone, and the apartment is next. Every single asset you and Liam relied on for your status, your comfort, and your financial security was controlled by the woman you kicked out of your lives. And now, they are all gone. My voice was flat, purely explanatory. I wasn't rubbing it in. I was simply exposing the reality they had chosen. I used the silence again to let the full weight of my confession sink in. You and Liam had a choice, I continued. You could have been grateful. You could have been respectful. You could have honored the dedication of the person who gave you that start. Instead, you treated me like a disposable checkbook, a non-entity who could be humiliated in public. I simply adjusted my relationship to you to match the one you defined, non-existent. Just as I finished, a muffled, furious sound came over the line, followed by a grunt, and the voice changed. It was Liam. He must have been listening on speakerphone, absorbing the catastrophic news in real time. His voice was raw, shaking with anger and humiliation. "Mother, what have you done?" he screamed. "Are you trying to ruin my life? My marriage? This is our life. You can't just take it all away." Liam's accusation, "Are you trying to ruin my life?" was the final necessary hurdle. It was the moment I had to confront the core betrayal, the apathy he had shown when his wife humiliated me. The transition from revenge to reckoning was complete. My tone immediately changed from cold, surgical legal explanation to deep, heart-wrenching parental disappointment. I dropped the formal language and spoke as Chris, the wounded mother. "Ruin your life, Liam? Is that what you think? You think I ruined your life? No, son. I didn't ruin your life. You chose to let your life be ruined." He started sputtering, trying to use the old tactics, the guilt, the appeal to my history of care. "This is petty, Mother. It's so petty. After everything, you're destroying my marriage because of a seating chart." "A seating chart?" I interrupted, my voice cracking slightly, but holding firm. "It wasn't a seating chart, Liam. It was a line drawn in the sand. When Tiffany told me, your mother, that I was not family, and you sat there in silence, you agreed with her. You chose her manufactured, transactional family over the one who wiped your nose, paid your tuition, and gave you the keys to your financial independence. I let the full torrent of my accumulated pain spill out, controlled, but undeniable. When you allowed her to humiliate me, you told me I was nothing more than a bank account. And I'm sorry, Liam, but bank accounts don't cry. They don't hurt. They just run out of money. I simply became what you both told me I was." I continued the confrontation, challenging his adulthood. "Where were you when you should have stood up for your mother? Where was your pride? You're 25 years old, Liam. You signed a marriage contract. You have responsibilities now. Tiffany made you choose between the person who supported your entire life and the illusion of the life she provided. You chose the illusion, the luxury, the quick fix. And now, you have to face the consequence of not having a quick fix anymore." My voice softened with a hint of genuine sadness. "I didn't do this to destroy your marriage. I did this to force you to stand on your own 2 feet. You are relying on a house and a car you didn't earn. You're trying to build a life with a woman who only respects wealth, not love. This is a life lesson, Liam. A painful one, yes. But if this marriage fails because it lost its funding, then it was never a marriage built on love anyway." He was silent for a long time. The only sound, a choked sob that I couldn't tell was his or Tiffany's. "I hate you," he finally whispered, the words weak and defeated. "I know," I replied, feeling the terrible weight of that word, but also an odd lightness. But maybe one day you'll understand." He hung up abruptly, slamming the phone down with a sound that reverberated through my heart. I sat in silence, the emotional exhaustion finally setting in. I had done the right thing, the necessary thing, but the worry for Liam lingered like a faint scent of smoke. I had delivered the life lesson to the boy, I concluded, rubbing my temples. But there was still the final detail for Tiffany. An hour passed. I was washing the few dishes from my dinner, trying to regain my equilibrium, when the phone rang one last time. It was Tiffany. This time, there was no hysteria, no anger. Only raw, abject desperation. She sounded broken, defeated. "Chris," she pleaded, her voice barely a whisper, thick with tears and mucus. "Please. I beg you. Just tell me what you need me to do. I'll get on my knees. I'll apologize publicly. We'll send you a new invitation. We'll give you a whole table. Just, please reverse the transfer. Please give us the money back. I promise I'll be better. I'll treat you like a queen. Just please, Chris, please, don't let us lose everything." She offered me exactly what she knew I had craved for years: respect, validation, and a place in their lives. The temptation to give in, to soothe the pain of my son's wife and regain my place, was immense. But I held firm. I remembered the cold contempt in her eyes at that dinner. I remembered Liam's silence. I listened to her pleas for a full minute, letting her pour out every ounce of her self-pity and false promises. When she finally ran out of breath, I spoke, my voice soft, calm, and utterly final. "Tiffany," I said, "I have one last thing to say to you. And I want you to listen very carefully, because this is the last word you will hear from me on this subject, perhaps forever." I paused, allowing the weight of the moment to settle. This was the conclusion. The line that tied the entire narrative, the confession, and the retribution together. Now do you understand why I wasn't invited? Because the one who pays the rent is always family. And now that you and Liam will finally have to pay your own, you'll have to figure out how to manage as a real family. I didn't wait for a response. I didn't need one. I gently lowered the phone from my ear and pressed the end button. I felt a profound, almost spiritual calm wash over me. I had not reversed any of the actions. The car would be repossessed. They had 7 days to find the money to cover the mortgage or lose the apartment. Their life of subsidized luxury was over. I poured myself another glass of that Cabernet, walking to the large window overlooking my garden. I looked at my reflection in the glass, a woman who had been humiliated and then transformed. I was no longer the mother ATM, the quiet enabler. I was Chris, the architect of my own peace and the protector of my own boundaries. I raised the glass, looking into the darkness where their opulent life used to be, and I toasted myself. To me, I murmured. To freedom. And to a new life, finally lived just for Chris. The next chapter of my life began right then, in that quiet, debt-free, and most importantly, guilt-free house. My confession was over. The lesson had been delivered. And I was finally at peace.